Thank you again, folks. Appreciate everyone's interest in the RA position. We just wanted to briefly start by giving you an overview of what tonight will look like. We are going to set the scene a little bit in terms of some of the impacts that we've been grappling with from last recruitment period this year, possible impacts for next year, talking about some of the things that we're looking for in the RA process. We will also go over the application for this year, which has changed a bit if folks are familiar with our previous processes. And then really exciting, we have a bunch of student leaders who are here to join us tonight. So we have a living learning community resident assistant and some of our other RAs. And so you all will be able to put questions into the chat and we will get them to the students at the end for our Q&A. I also wanted to share that we are working on a frequently asked questions page. And so any comments that come in tonight that are either ones that we've seen before that we can't get to or that have come in through email, we'll be updating that document and sharing it on our website to help give information to all different folks who are interested. So again, appreciate you all for being here. My name is Jordan Richmond. I'm one of the assistant directors. And so I am excited to now hand it over to Kirk White, who's our Associate Director for Residential Education.
All right, hi there, everyone. As Jordan said, my name is Kirk White. I am the Associate Director for Residential Education. And, you know, I'm sitting here and I just got my second COVID test, so I'm a little headachy. But I'm happy to say I got the vaccine, which is exciting. You know, a few things are as exciting to me than RA recruitment selection and that entire process. I've been in this gig for 18 years now. And every single year, I'm just incredibly amazed by the caliber of students who apply for these positions and get these positions. So I'm incredibly happy. That looks like 131 folks are watching in. That's great. Not sure how many have applied at this point. But, you know, I will say that this is the toughest job that you will ever love. For residential life, it is absolutely essential to have an RA in those communities, and they are the key to the student success, okay? And so with that in mind, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about why we're excited about next year, and also maybe lay a little bit of groundwork in terms of what we do know and then what we don't know. So first of all, when I think about next year, I get remarkably excited about the opportunity that it presents. I think 2021 was certainly a challenging year for many people. But as we look ahead, what I think this means for us as an organization for residential life is that we really do have an opportunity to really start from the ground up and build a residential life program and an experience for our students that is exactly how we want it to be. We have learned a lot over the years and we've had a lot of old practices in place. But next year, when I'm working with my team and we're working with the RAs, I don't know if there's anything that's sort of written in stone anymore. And so when we think about our students, I say we're going to aim high. I think people tend to meet expectations when you set them, so we're going to set them high. And that means that we're going to have students who are engaged in the floor. We're going to have students who get together and go to the games whenever we're able to do that. Okay, so lots of stuff to look forward to. And again, you all are really a key part to making sure that residential life is able to achieve its mission. So I think there we go. Now, there's a couple things that we do not know as of this time. And so it is really important to sort of kind of address those and put them out front and center. I think the main thing right now that we don't know is we're not sure what our occupancy is going to be. We are working very closely with the LA Department of Public Health in terms of what we will be able to do in terms of how many students we can bring into our communities and what the configuration is going to be. go back a year ago, you know, we went from triples to all of a sudden doubles. And then when we opened this year, we really only had the option to house people who had no other option. It's gradually sort of creeped back up, and we were optimistic about doubles. And now I would say we're even cautiously optimistic about having triples again. Having triples, what that means is that we're able to really bring all of our resources to bear for this experience. And as many students as we can, we want to get them onto the Hill. Because again, I imagine some people watching this maybe have not ever been in our residential community. This might be your first year as a student, and you've not really had the residence halls experience. And so as we look ahead for next year, we're going to have a community that's really comprised of people who are first year students and have never lived on the Hill. And we're going to have people who are second year students and they've most likely never lived on the Hill either. And then we'll have a handful and a smattering of people who are entering into their third year in UCLA. But even they only really had 2 quarters of normal quarters before COVID hit. So that means that's a really big reset button. How many people are we going to be able to accommodate? We just don't know. Again, we're really hoping for triples, but anything could change at any point. And so we just want to make sure that we're putting that out there. We're also not positive about who we're going to be able to give priority to. That is being worked out at upper levels of the university, but who's going to be offered housing contracts. We know that people are anxiously waiting and wanting to have that information. And again, it's just a series of dominoes. But we really do hope to get that information from the university as soon as possible. What this also means is we are not, finally, the most relevant to you all, is that we are not 100% positive how many resident assistants we'll be able to bring on next year. And so the plan is to have a full cohort, the same as we would during a normal academic year if it was triples, and as close as possible if we're doubles. If things take a very bad turn and the pandemic, COVID is raging once again, and we're down to singles, then once again, it's sort of all bets are off. But we want to be really, really sensitive to the hiring and making sure that when we extend these offers, you know, we really want you to know that we want you here to be part of the team. And that is why, again, we're having such a robust recruitment and hopefully selection procedure. Now, again, COVID certainly affected us this year. And what I want people to know as they're thinking about applying for the RA job for the coming year, is it's important to understand that COVID is not going anywhere. Okay, COVID will still be around. It will still be a factor in our lives. Students can expect to have to wear masks. There are still going to be restrictions and around gatherings and things of the such. So I really need resident assistants, people who are applying for the job, to be aware of that. Going along with that, and if we can move to the next slide. There we go. This feeds directly into what we're looking for. And what we need more than anything are people who take this job, who care and want to do their best work for the community. And what that's going to mean is we're going to need people to be more flexible than ever. We're going to need to be able to pivot and turn on a dime in order to deal with the effects of COVID, as well as, again, with a population that really is really fresh into UCLA, and certainly into the living communities. So we need folks who can understand that things could very well change. The university could ask us, when I say us, I mean residential life, they could ask us to assist with some mitigation efforts for COVID. And what does that look like, and how would we tap the RAs? Don't know, but I do know that this would fall under those other duties as assigned. And we do need people to know that you'll need to engage with students, certainly in some capacity. I don't think it should surprise anyone that there's a very, very big budget impact from the last several months on UCLA housing and residential life. And so in order to ensure that our students are getting all the services that they pay for and deserve, it is potentially possible that we could have resident assistants required to do an office shift for a handful of hours a week. We're hopefully going to be able to avoid that, but it's important that people understand that that is something that could happen if we find out that for whatever reason our resources are continue to dwindle, and we still need to make sure that the students are getting what they need. So again, there's a number of unknowns there, but more than anything, here's what I do know. I do know that students are going to be back on campus, and I know that we are going to need resident assistants who are passionate, who care, who are ready to do the work, and want to be part of this team. And I have a feeling if you're watching this right now, you're probably the right person, and that's exciting. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jordan, I believe, and I'll hang loose for questions later. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kirk. I really appreciate that. It's a lot of information that you were able to encapsulate. And I know that for all of us with staff, want to be as transparent as possible because we know that the application, the process, the ability to have this job is really impactful for students and also comes with a lot of direct impacts in terms of where and how you may live and the financial implications. So we really want to do our best and earnestly give out updates as quickly as possible, but not wanting to put the cart before the horse. So I appreciate, Kirk, all the info you're able to share. Now we are going to talk about the actual application. And so as you can see on the screen, the application has opened. It opened last week and it will be open for another week. We're going to do a brief overview of the application. Again, it can be found on our website and I have the link later in our slideshow. Wanted to hit a couple points that are really important that are changes for this year. Applicants have to use their Google UCLA email to log in. So this is really important that you are using the correct @g.ucla email when you submit. And also please note that you can only submit your application once and cannot edit your responses afterwards. Every year we always encourage this, but especially this year, handwrite it, write it in Microsoft Word. If you're artistic and you need to draw out your thoughts, whatever you need to do, we really encourage you to do some of your prep work, not inside the application. Feel free to open it, but not submitting it right away. That in mind, not waiting until the last day or hours. We know that the application asks a lot of questions about you and your goals and your vision. And so those are things that we want you to spend some time thinking about and giving deliberate answers. And so patience in terms of not submitting instantly, but also making sure that you're marking your calendars so that you get it in a timely fashion. This year we have 2 video prompts and 2 written responses. This is a similar format to what we've done in the past, but we have taken out some of the written responses. We are currently not having any group process at this point. This is the full process, but as Kirk shared, there are so many variables that we are still teasing through for next year. So we'll continue to keep folks posted. The current process that we have laid out is that once our applications are in on the 5th, we are going to do a review process that we always do, which includes multiple professional staff reviewing every application at least twice. And we remove any identifying information to try and remove bias. Once we do a cut and we anticipate being able to get through all that towards the end of April, our current plan, without knowing how many students and how many RAs to hire, is that we'll be able to update folks in terms of if they are no longer being considered in the process or if they are still in our finalist list. Again, not knowing how many new RA positions we'll have to offer, we want to make sure that we are updating you as timely as possible in our process, but giving you a heads up on the front end that we don't know as of tonight, March 29th, the exact date that we can make official offers for next year. The other thing I really wanted to highlight is that knowing that remote work has forced people to use the internet and other things, it's not as accessible for everyone, and we don't want to assume that just because you may be able to view this webinar that you have the tools and means to complete the application. So anyone who has accessibility needs or challenges, please email the RA recruitment address, which also is at the end of this slideshow. I want to give a little caveat. This is not emailing asking, hey, can you proofread the application, or is this the best answer? We are here to assist in most ways, not in terms of helping to that extent with your application. The committee will be on standby April 5th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. In order to get a link to connect with the committee, you'll need to reach out to us in advance, and then the committee will be able to connect with you. And again, if there's any questions as you're going through the application or anything, hopefully we'll be able to answer most of them tonight with the rest of our panelists joining us, but feel free to reach out to us just the same. So thank you for your time. And now I'm going to transition to Michaela, who's one of our living learning community RAs, who's going to speak specifically about some of our living learning communities and then share perspective about the RA experience for someone who focuses specifically on an LLC.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Michaela. Thank you, Jordan, first off. My name is Michaela. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a fourth year neuroscience major. And I'll briefly introduce a really awesome opportunity that you can be a part of as an RA called the Living Learning Communities, or LLCs for short. So to begin, LLCs are really cool communities spaced around the Hill that allow residents with similar interests, backgrounds, passions to come together in a shared living space to explore and engage in programs that really cater towards their social, academic, and personal goals. So on the screen here, you see 10 LLCs and the transfer experience that students and you as a prospective applicant can be a part of. So if you're looking at this list and you're thinking, like that actually sounds kind of interesting, I highly, highly recommend that you look into it and apply. Be sure to be on the lookout for the additional supplemental question for the LLC RA position. But if you are curious for more information, I'll be more than happy to answer questions at the end. To share a little bit about my experience, I've been part of the LLCs for pretty much my entire 4 years. Here at UCLA, I was heavily involved in the Filipinx LLC as a resident, then as an intern, and then as an RA for the past 2 years. And it has been such a rewarding experience. I still keep in touch with all of my residents and roommates from my first year here. So a lot of really great relationship building, community building, and a lot of learning about my identity, my background. And if you're interested in other LLCs, a lot of learning and exploring your interests or your passions. So it's a really great way to do that and get that on your to-do list. And that wraps up everything for me, and I'll transition it over to our resident assistant panelists.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michaela. So yeah, excited to have several RAs joining us tonight. I'm going to ask them to each briefly introduce themselves, just share their name, their academic last year, and the number of years they've been an RA, and then we will start to go through some of the questions that you all have been sending in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Wells. I'm a fourth year political science and African American studies double major, and this is my first year as a RA.
Hi, everyone. I'm ARA Schlingman. I'm a third year molecular cell and developmental bio major, MCDB. This is my second year as an RA, so I'm a returning RA, and I'm just excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Garrett May. I use he, him pronouns. I am a third-year material science and engineering major, and this is my second year as an RA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lorenzo Polito. I'm a third-year poli-sci and English major. This is my second year being an RA.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Larabeau, and I am a fourth-year psychobiology major. And this is my second and a half year being an RA because I got hired halfway through my second year.
Great, thank you all. So first question up has two parts. The attendees are going easy on you all. What are some challenges that students face as an RA, so juggling both the RA responsibilities and being a student? And then what advice would you give to applicants?
Alexis, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellery. I will answer. Okay, so I think one of the hardest things that I could say is the pop-ups. You don't really know exactly what to expect all the time in any position or leadership role that you take on. So that might be the most challenging. I think a way to help with that is just being optimistic and knowing that if you do get the RA position, you are more than qualified to help and trusting your abilities. And then the best information that I got when I was applying was to be natural and really speak about what inspires you the most, which could really be anything. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, just to add on to what Alexis shared, I think one of the biggest challenges is knowing that you are a student first and you do want to take care of yourself. Obviously, you're there to serve your residents, and that's our primary goal as RAs, is to support our residents and build community in our dorms. But you are your own person, and making sure to set healthy boundaries and taking care of yourself, I think, is a challenge that a lot of us face, and it's important to remember. And kind of just to echo Alexis again, the best advice is definitely just to be yourself. I think I remember when I applied, one of my video answers was just how much I love baking and how much that's how I showed my love for other people. And so just being really genuine and not not answering what you think the hiring committee wants to hear.
Great, thank you. If any other RAs want to jump in, our next question ties really nicely into this. So you all talked about balancing your time. How much time? Again, ebbs and flows and sometimes challenging to nail down, but if you could give an average to folks in terms of how many hours you spend doing RA tasks in a given week, and then any tips in terms of how you balance that time commitment.
Again, like he was saying, it changes a lot, but I'd say during a normal school year, once you've transitioned fully into the RA role, not considering welcome week and those first couple weeks of a lot of prep work, I'd say on average it's around 10 hours a week. Some regular RA duties include having Monday meetings with your staff, as well as being on duty on average 1 to 2 times a week. Which goes from 8 p.m. until the next morning. You don't have to stay up the whole night. That's just when you're on duty, you go to bed at a normal time. And planning events, it averages out to about 10 hours, at least personally, with the exception of the very beginning of the year. It takes significant more time to get to know your residents and set up your floor and things like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there's no straight answer to this question because the hours can definitely vary week to week. I do know that if you look officially on the timesheets, they say maximum is around 15 hours a week. But then again, you don't know what type of things you're going to be working on. I definitely say though, I agree with Garrett, the beginning is always the busiest because you have to set up your bulletin boards, your passives, meet your residents. So that's definitely where I would say, experience the peak of all of the work at once. But usually counting duty and then just running into your residence and doing passives or different programs, I think it, yeah, really helps whenever you balance out your personal schedule with RA stuff. And I definitely think it's doable. I don't think I've ever reached like the 15-hour, like 10-hour craziness. So yeah, if that helps.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I see another question, which is going to give, I think, good contrast to some of the other answers. So y'all have done an amazing job balancing the RA role. If anything comes to mind that you're able and willing to share, anything that is a struggle with the current position of an RA in terms of balancing or challenging tasks, and any again, advice or suggestions for managing that or utilizing resources to successfully accomplish those tasks.
I see a question that kind of goes hand in hand. It says, as an RA, how you be able to balance your RA position with other involvements such as internships and part-time jobs? I can definitely speak to that. I am currently working at Westcom, which is the credit union on campus. So you can definitely, it's definitely possible. And I have definitely relied on Garrett, who has been an amazing co. You also get paired with co's when you're RA. So, and also if you don't have a co, you also have a staff, and the Denev West staff is slight of amazing this year. Not even slight, it is amazing to be a part of this staff. So just relying on your staff members, because there's people who are experienced in this position, and then most of you guys will probably be first year RAs. And so just relying on, you know, your community to help you with all the work that you're going to be doing, but also just learning time management, because time management looks different for everyone. And so just learning what works best for you, and also talking to your RD and letting them know about your situation so that they can help you throughout the process.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Alexis said. Personally, from my experience, I have been able to be an RA and also have a work study job on campus before COVID, and also have like medical internships and still work with different extracurriculars. So it's definitely possible and doable. And I think my biggest piece of advice would be just, yeah, prioritize your personal mental health, your academics, and if you're the type of person that needs structure, then one thing that I thought was really helpful was just setting aside a time every week to work on RA stuff. And if at least if you know, like, okay, every Tuesday night, I'm going to respond to emails, I'm going to reach out to my residents. Like, I know for sure that's going to be the time where I can work on RA stuff. Sometimes that could be like a good source of comfort to know that, you know, you can balance everything. And, but yeah, I think, you know, as you go along, you get the hang of it. And some weeks there'll be nothing, and other weeks it'll all pile on top of each other. Like you might have midterms and residents will reach out to you. So yeah, definitely prioritize yourself first, and then whenever you're ready to go, it'll usually flow together. So.
Thank you. Yeah, again, great advice. And as Alexis shared, connecting with your resident director and assistant resident director, they are the professional staff who are really invested in you and your success, first as a student and then as a resident assistant. And so helping with the actual roles and then balancing everything. So any outside job, connecting with them first to get approval, and just their support and how you balance those things. Another question that came in, which I think again ties into some of the things that Kirk shared about impacts of the pandemic that we could continue to face. But one question that came in is asking about this year and how it's been working throughout the pandemic to make sure that residents still feel connected and safe, although there is social distancing protocols.
I can speak on this one. Just to make sure residents are staying connected. One thing my co and I did right away is just kind of started a group me as soon as we found out who our residents were, And it really helped that we have athletes that are all on the same team. And so it was just kind of helping them find a system where they can get to know each other because they were all incoming freshmen, helping them find a system to get to know each other well while still maintaining COVID protocol, meaning like not too many people in their room or stuff like that. So I guess it's just more of working with your residents to find a good common ground where they can still hang out and get to know each other, but you're also following the rules that are set in place. And kind of what my residents and I figured out was everybody could just open their door, prop their door open, and just sit in their doorway. That way you can sit around and talk and, like, I guess eat together, like how you would actually on if you were on campus at a table or something like that. And so I guess it's just more just going with the flow and learning as things go along. And that's how you figure stuff out a lot in this role, actually, not just during COVID time, but in normal time as well.
Yeah, I did a similar thing, very similar to Lorenzo, where we did a group meeting the very beginning of the year. And then later on, we figured out that a lot of people on my floor really liked board games and other stuff like that. So what we've been doing is having most weekends, we have like online games that we're doing over Zoom. So it's all like COVID safe and everything like that. And then a follow-up question that I saw is, how do you set boundaries with residents? I know personally this was the hardest thing for me as an RA. Is like, I definitely would say I'm a giver. So like figuring out when I've given too much and like making sure I still have time for me. One thing that I did last year when I was in person is I had a little sign on my door, and it would like identify what my state was, like if I was in my room, if I was on campus or like away. And then if I was in my room, it would be if I was like open for people to just like knock and I was free, or if I was like busy, and then residents would respect that really well. So it's really finding your own system of setting boundaries. I know, at least personally, was really difficult in the beginning. So finding that is really, really important as an RA, because chances are if you're applying to this job, you're very similar where you really want to help people. So figuring out where that balance is.
I think this year I've had a very unique experience with my floor. I don't necessarily have a floor that always interacts, but at the beginning, I think we all kind of did a really good job of like creating group meets and speaking to them. Especially, I think this year was the highlight for them was probably us speaking to them at the beginning of the year during welcome week, when you literally have all that information coming in and setting up meetings and also setting boundaries in those meetings, which I found has been very easy for them to follow. I usually, some of my boundaries is like, if I'm in my room and you see me walking, you can definitely ask me a question. If there are questions that need like immediate response, you can always knock on my door. If they're not immediate responses, you can message me. My group me is always on, and I will see the message and get back to you in a timely manner. And then also just redirecting them to places, because sometimes their questions aren't really, their questions might not always be questions that you can answer, but you can always redirect them to the resources that you have available. And then I did want to speak to just the creativity that was kind of given to us this year, that you can usually use on your floor. So following the theme of your, building, but also I did like a music theme this year, and I created a Spotify list that like all of our residents like really liked and participated in. So that was one cool thing that we did.
I think one of the biggest things I learned this year, just because it's been so different with engagement in the RA role, is really meeting my residents where they're at. We started off the year really great. Obviously started a group me, had a bunch of engagement, but since then it's kind of fallen off. And though I continue to reach out, my residents are very comfortable just kind of like being in their own space, and kind of recognizing that as an RA and being like, that's okay. I'm here for them. They come to me when I need it. Kind of just recognizing that your role might even change within your year with different residents, and acknowledging that and knowing that that's okay is kind of a big part of this role, kind of what Kirk talked about at the beginning. Being able to roll with the punches with the continuation of COVID is super important.
Another thing that I just want to quickly add that I think is really helpful is intentional programming. I think it's really important to know the type of residents that you have and where they're coming from, around what years they're at. For example, like this year I have a lot of athletes. I've got a lot of football players. So I know that maybe doing like a paint and sip night might not go so well. So I think it's, yeah, just really important to know your residents and know where they're at. And once you figure that out, you'll definitely get more comfortable and know how to communicate with them, how to reach out to them, and yeah, just being cognizant of where they're at in their journeys.
Thanks. Another question that came in was asking about some of the conflicts that RAs may need to address among students. And so, again, awesome to highlight a lot of the fun and engagement, but part of the RA's role is helping to have students have dialogue across differences and just be able to engage in conversation. So if you could share specifics, obviously no names or anything, but just giving a more realistic glimpse besides the conceptual scenarios that an RA may encounter with residents.
I was on a first year floor last year, so I definitely had a lot of this. I was in Hedrick Hall, for those of you who know what that is. It's a very popular freshman dorm with a lot of stuff going down. And they vary so wildly from so-and-so roommate gets blackout drunk and is loud when they come back to their room. A room like this so-and-so roommate doesn't know how to put on deodorant, and that is an issue. Or constantly getting sexiled during finals week. Very fun experiences. Honestly, 9 times out of 10, it's just talk to your roommate. Have you told them that this makes you feel this way? Because, okay, we love our residents to death, but they simply do not understand how to like approach people when there are issues. So like, it's a lot of that, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I can definitely add to that. I lived in Dykstra Hall last year, so definitely a lot of freshmen. We had a lot of alcohol incidents or roommate conflicts, and I think I definitely your training is very helpful. Like they train you really well. You get a lot of time to practice and know the correct protocols whenever it comes to those really serious incidents. But I think a lot of times too, like you'll get mental health incidents, like or I guess like just residents reaching out to you and they just want someone to talk to. So yeah, communication is a big part of it. Whether it's a resident reaching out to you individually, asking for help. What's really nice is that we have, you know, higher ups that we can, and a ton of resources that we can give to the residents. So yeah, that's really helpful in getting you prepared. And then also for like roommate conflicts and all of the like general freshman year stuff that RAs deal with. Yeah, we definitely recommend like communicating with having like conversations with the roommates, and we have like roommate contracts in the beginning, so that's really helpful in establishing like people's boundaries right off the bat. But yeah, people are always gonna be coming to you with different things, so it's just you gotta roll with the punches and be prepared for some of the. I had one thing to add, like the randomest thing I had, or the randomest incident I encountered was some resident like rubbed banana like all over another resident's doors because they were mad at them. And as like I know writing the IR for that was wild, but yeah, I guess that just goes to show is like you don't know what you're gonna come across, and people people just want to have fun sometimes and they do crazy things, so be prepared.
I think I can kind of give a little bit more context for like the incidents part. Kind of when COVID was starting to happen more, like it was more present in the US before we got shut down as a university and everybody had to go home. This was probably in February. I remember a resident came to me because uh, they were an international student from Asia, and they had gone home because they had something going on, and they came back, and their roommates wouldn't let them back in the room because they were scared of them having COVID, and because the country they went home to was known for having COVID. And so it was just kind of helping residents see, you know, that it's not okay to have a prejudiced attitude towards things, and also help them understand. And I understand that they were young too, they were freshmen. So it's just kind of helping residents grow as people, as well as academically, as well as just in all areas. I think that's part of the role of an RA that's not really spoken about too much. Is it's more than just academic and community building. It's just helping residents grow all together. And so that was a tough one to deal with, obviously, but I had a great RD to help me with that situation, and we got everything squared away. And I really do think the residents grew from that situation. So it's just another thing that will come up. You know, some stuff may test you, like your morals and what you believe in, but it's important to be understanding of where people are coming from and understand that they don't have the same mindset as you, and just to kind of go through the proper protocol as an RA and not overstep your boundaries and incorporate those who need to be incorporated, such as your RD.
Thank you all. Yeah, and Lorenzo, I appreciate you sharing that. It ties in really nicely to our next question, which is asking about your favorite experience as an RA. And so whether it is, as you shared, helping students grow and you know, be successful, or anything else that comes to mind. So a couple highlights to share with the group.
I can hop in really quick just because came to mind so quickly. Last year, pre-COVID, my co-RA and I put together a jam session for a few of our residents, because they all, you would walk into their room and they had like 17 instruments strewn over the beds and like in the corners, in the closets. And so they just loved to like hang out and jam together. And so we were able to like book one of our multi-purpose rooms in Reber Terrace, which I was an RA in last year, and just kind of set it up for them. And other residents came down and just hung out. Other RAs stopped by, and it was just a really, really great time. They had such a blast. My co-RA like is a very amateur rapper, and we got him on the mic, so that was really awesome too. And so yeah, just again, it wasn't so much, you know, growing, but just providing residents a space to enjoy themselves and to, you know, express themselves was super, super rewarding.
I can actually also talk on this part. What felt really rewarding to me was actually around the time when it was time to apply to be an RA for the following year, which was, so this was last year, pre-COVID again, obviously. I had a bunch of my residents approach me saying, you and Ashley, who was my co at the time, you guys make the RA job look so fun, and you make it so fun for us. Like, we want to pay it forward. We want to be an RA. How can we go about it? And I ended up having to help like 5 or 6 different residents with their applications. So like, that was really rewarding to me, because it showed me like, hey, I must have done something right in my job to make my residents want to do the same thing that I do and be that kind of resource for students just like them coming in. So that was pretty great to see.
I think one of my most rewarding experiences has to do with music, which is ironic because when I applied for RA, the third time, I just want to let y'all know, I applied 3 times, and the third time I got it. So it is okay to apply again if you don't get it. Always believe in yourself. But I created a music list on this floor this year, but living in an LLC around people of your culture or your intersectionalities is a very rewarding and interesting experience. So our funnest experience, I think my funnest experience was like the karaoke nights on the African diaspora floor was so loud that everyone in the entire Reber Plaza could hear it. And everyone would join in. We would have even people who weren't from the African diaspora would come. And that was one of the like biggest community things that I have seen on this in Res Life. So that was really cool to be a part of.
For me personally, I think one of the most rewarding parts about being an RA is the people you meet and the stories and backgrounds you hear from. I think personally, like I've met a lot of my friends through just Res Life in general. And as for residents, you meet people from all over. So for example, last year my co and I did an event called Panda Express Your Identities. And we weren't sure how it was going to go at first. But it ended up being a really great turnout. We had like almost like 75 residents coming from different floors. And it was really cool because we got to hear people's stories, their backgrounds, how they identified and what really like made them who they were. So I think just incorporating different fun things like that. I know COVID is a different time, so you can really get creative with it, whether it's like virtual or having like, I think Lorenzo was saying earlier, like leaving your doors open and getting people to interact like that. But yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things is you get to meet people from everywhere and really, yeah, see where their backgrounds are and find genuine friendships. So.
Very similarly to Natalie with like the relationships you're building, that was definitely like my favorite part of last year. My most rewarding experience was like at the end, which was unfortunately cut short after 2 quarters instead of 3, was just like seeing the floor that my co and I had built at the end was just like amazing. I got lucky enough to have a floor where there were a lot of people who were like consistently in the lounge that were just sort of became like one big family. And I distinctly remember when we got the email saying that spring quarter was going to be online, and just like everyone was like bawling in like the lounge, which is really, really sad, but it just goes to show like how close we had gotten in the 6 months that we had known each other. Cause like everyone was like new to UCLA because it was a freshman floor. And that was definitely by far the most rewarding experience, was just building a community together.
Thank you all. I really appreciated all your answers. And Natalie, your response really was leading nicely into our next question, which is asking about how, as an RA, you work with residents to address and communicate about cultural differences. And so you had shared a programmatic and educational one. And so if others have experiences or insight on that, please share.
I actually did have a little bit of an issue with this last year, especially as it was getting around like the beginning of like election season. Not so much cultural differences. Well, it sort of ties into cultural differences, but political differences. And that was a big thing with a couple of residents. And just the number one thing is like very much trying to handle the situation with a very delicate touch, because you don't want to step on anyone's like toes as far as opinions and stuff, unless it's getting as far as like dehumanizing other people. Just trying to get other people to realize like, while like all opinions, most opinions are like valid, and getting to realize that you're looking at the human and not their opinions is sort of like the best way to go about it. But that's definitely can be one of the hardest parts about this job, is when cultures or political ideals clash. It can be really difficult trying to handle that really delicately.
I'll just add quickly that it's also important to remember that our training is really comprehensive, and our of equipping all of us with the tools to do kind of what Garrett was talking about, to handle things really delicately. And so don't let that discourage you. It's certainly, like he said, one of the most difficult things you have to deal with, especially when you may very strongly personally agree or disagree with one of the parties. Kind of separating yourself from that and making sure that you are just there to facilitate a, cordial, safe discussion if that's what they're there for, and doing that. But again, you will receive fabulous training, so don't let that discourage you.
Also, one thing that I did forget to mention, very similar to what Ellery was saying, is on top of the training you have, if you can't separate yourself from something, like, it's absolutely okay. And like you have an entire staff of people to lean on. And like if you can't handle something, you can be like with your co-RA or someone else from your staff being like, I can't separate myself. Can you help handle this? And that's perfectly acceptable. You're never like, as much as we try to handle as much as we can, you're never 100% obligated to do something yourself, because we're a whole staff and we definitely act like one. We're like, we lean on each other a lot, and that's really important.
I was just going to add, I think what is a great start to helping that is in the beginning of the year, just establishing the type of floor and the type of environment you want to create for your residents, and just like really showing everyone like this is supposed to be a safe environment. We're not going to tolerate, you know, any type of like whether it's racial problems or being prejudiced against residents for their beliefs. Like everyone is entitled to believe what they want to believe, and we all want to live in a place where we can have fun experiences and just succeed in our, whether it's academic journeys or journeys in life. So I think really establishing that from the beginning is helpful. And then if those, you know, serious incidents do arise, then really talking to the residents that are involved with it. And then, yeah, like Garrett was mentioning, you always have your advisors, your ARDs are in RD. So you're always equipped with resources and people who have even more experience dealing with these things. So if there's ever a time where you don't know how to handle a situation, like it's not all on you. And sometimes it does get to that point where it's like, you know what, this is no longer in my like scope of practice. Like I don't know how to handle something like this, and that's totally fine. You know, we're not trained psychologists or professors that we know how to handle all of these situations. So that's totally okay. And as long as you're there for your residents, that's all that matters.
Thank you all. Those were, you know, really thoughtful answers, and it's not the easiest subject to share your thoughts on a panel, let alone engage with it with residents. And so I think that's a really good example of some of the more challenging aspects of being an RA, but the also really rewarding aspects of being able to engage in those types of conversations with students. I have one more question for the panelists, and then I will answer a few other questions that have come in. And again, we are putting together an FAQ, and so not your last chance to ask questions. We're going to do our best to collect some of the questions that were asked and answered and post it on our FAQ page, which will be linked to our website. And so our last panelist question is, as an RA, what is the best way to bond and get to know your residents?
I can go first. The best way to bond is to immediately, like, you know, whether you believe it or realize it or not, there is definitely a power dynamic that exists. And it's just a matter of making sure that residents understand that, like, you're not there to boss them around. You're not there to be, you know, I guess the quote unquote fun sucker. You're just there to make sure that everybody's taken care of, make sure everybody's doing all right, both mentally, health wise, physically wise, emotionally wise, everything. Making sure everybody respects each other, building a community. And so I think it's just important to establish yourself on the floor as somebody who everybody can come to, you know, whether it be just being yourself or just showing them all the resources you have access to or things you know of, asking them questions to better get to know them right away, because it just kind of builds that connection immediately, from what I've noticed. And it just helps them, you know, when they're struggling with something, feel more comfortable coming to you. And it just makes their experience overall a lot better at UCLA. And you kind of want to be that person they remember that helped make their UCLA experience, especially their first year, the great year that it was, which hopefully it would be.
I would say building community is not always what, like, the picture that we paint at the end of the year and how great, like, we're closely committed and to each other is not always how it can start off. You don't know what community you're gonna get. You don't know what kind of people, where they're from. And so I think it's just being optimistic from the beginning, but also reaching out in the beginning and letting them know that you're here as the RA and as a person who is here to help and to provide resources with the boundaries that you have set for yourself. And yeah, community is not just this like one linear approach to it. There's so many different things you can do. So I would also go back to the comment that I had mentioned before about trusting yourself and believing in your abilities and what you could like something and somebody will probably also like it. So there's really no limit to what you can do in programming, outreach. I know one of my programs this upcoming quarter is going to be face masks for the girls, because we have track athletes who don't really want to participate in the more so like resumes and all that stuff, but they do want to participate in face masks. So just learning about what fits your community.
Yeah, I definitely say as obvious as it seems, the like easiest way to build bonds is just time, especially in the beginning. Like I know last year when I had a really successful bond with many of my residents, it was just me just sitting in the lounge doing whatever I was doing, but instead of being in my room, just being out in the lounge. Because like time physically present with someone can go a long way really easily. Also, one of my biggest advice to new RAs would be don't take yourself too seriously. Like if you're walking onto your floor like, I'm the RA and I'm gonna write you up, her to her to her, nobody's gonna like you. But like it's like you're an RA and it's your job, but if you take yourself too seriously, then no one's gonna take you seriously. Like obviously you have self-respect, you're there to do a job, but I don't know, like you can be fun and still be a good RA and still follow the rules. Like they're not mutually exclusive, but just like spending time and I don't know, being yourself goes so far.
Yeah, just to attack, I think even being, yourself is super, super important, because when you do have that respect, I mean, you're going to command respect simply because of your role. You don't need to, like lord it over people's heads. You're definitely there. And so being yourself and, being a little fun, being a little weird is fine, because that's going to create trust with your residents that you're showing them your true self. And so that they feel comfortable coming to you when things are really tough, when they're going through a really, really tough time and they don't have anybody else to turn to. So remembering that, I think is pretty important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that everyone said. I think to add on to that, being confident in yourself, and then just talking to your residents, like getting to know their names. I know it's hard in the beginning, especially if you like last year I had like 120 residents, so it was really hard. But whenever you take the time to get to know their names and talk to them, find out where they're from, and not just like, hi, what's your major? What year are you? And then like just say hi to them, or maybe like never speak to them again, then it's like you don't really get to build those bonds. But whenever you remember like, oh wait, how was your test the other week you were telling me about, or like let's say you have athletes, like, oh, how was your game, how are you feeling about that? Really just asking them like open-ended questions where you give them the chance to communicate with you and to tell them whether they're having an amazing day or not so great day. I think that's where it really stems from. And yeah, it's definitely intimidating at first, especially if you've got a lot of people to meet. But I think if you're just yourself and, you're just genuine about it, like we're all students, we're all here to have a fun and safe time and try our best. So when you come from, I think, that perspective of it, it's really easy to just get to know people from there.
I do want to comment lastly that I noticed in my RA role that some students don't understand what an RA is, and also that they're really scared of RAs. So for one, I think a part of community is also reminding them that we are a community together and that we're also really the same ages, which is a great part of the RA experience, is that you're experiencing college and you have someone on the floor who is your age who can connect to you. So just really reminding yourself that this is just as connectivity and not always as like, sometimes it doesn't feel like it doesn't have to always feel like a designated job. It can feel just like, I'm here to help build community and follow the rules.
Thanks, all. I appreciate that. I think, being at a large public school, thousands of students, part of our job is to make sure that students and staff as well don't feel like they're number 1,200, that they have a name and identity, and that we take the time to communicate with them and just, do what we can to make sure that they're successful and that we've left a positive impact on their experience here, whether it's helping them to form community within our residence hall or getting them involved to join that club and form community elsewhere. And so I appreciate all the different ways that the RA shared that. As I said, I'm going to quickly go through. There were some questions about the finalist concept. And so again, this is something that is new for this year, relates back to what Kirk was sharing about the unknowns. What our goal is that the list of finalists, we will connect with housing, and we're going to ask if we can confirm that these people will be able to have a place in on-campus housing. What we are going to do is, as soon as the application closes and we have an idea of what our numbers are, is to connect with our housing colleagues. If we get 4,000 applications and we're used to 700, we're going to figure out with housing in terms of how many students we can make that confirmation to. So still a little bit tentative, but yes, the plan is that once we update status and say that you're a finalist, that we're hoping to negotiate with housing that it'll say your RA status isn't confirmed yet, but one way or another, you'll be able to be on campus. And so again, concrete language and dates will be shared as soon as we get information. There's been questions about alternates. And so those were for folks who have done really well in the process, but just because we have limited positions, likely we'll have an alternate list. Again, it's very hard to tell in terms of how many RA positions we'll have to offer. We know that every single year, one of the hardest things is that we have so many more qualified and talented students who apply than we have positions. And so that's where the wait list comes in, but we don't know if we will have that. And then in terms of eligibility, it does require to be a full-time student throughout the academic year. And so I believe those were the remaining questions that we had. I want to thank you all again. I want to thank the RAs who give up part of their evening. Again, this is part of the RA job, always coming to help students. And in this way, tonight, they are coming to help prospective RA candidates. So just want to thank, again, the RAs, the staff who were here, and mostly the students, you all showing interest in this position and just the perpetuity of the work that we aim for in residential life. So again, thank you all. And this is our website where our application is and our email address. And so thank you and have a great night.